My manager said, all right, guys, we have an opportunity. The Arch downtown is asking that we put a case manager down at the shelter to help. Who wants to do it? And my hand flew up so fast. It was like there were magnets in my fingertips and the ceiling was made of metal. And no one else had raised their hand. And I was like, well, shit.
This is the Atomic Souls Podcast.
Welcome to Atomic Souls Podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yes, who are you and what do you do?
My name is Liz Baker, and I am the Executive Director of the Other Ones Foundation.
Yes. And what is the Other Ones Foundation?
The Other Ones Foundation is a homeless service nonprofit here in Austin. We help individuals experiencing homelessness transition into permanent housing, and our primary way of doing that is through emergency shelter services and workforce development.
Yeah, you have a really good system going.
We're trying. So we're a pretty young organization. We're about 8 years old, and it's been quite the journey. And so we've grown pretty quickly and have been doing a lot of construction on our emergency shelter and are preparing for expansion. Yeah. And so our process and how we do our work is constantly evolving because we're growing so quickly at the same time as being fairly young for a nonprofit. We're just in this constant state of iteration, which is fun and exciting.
And stressful.
and challenging. It's got its challenges for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've toured a couple times, and every time you're like, this is the new part. This is the new part. It's great.
Always something new. Always something new. But I'm so grateful for the organization and where it's come. I think we did a lot of work really early on developing a values system for our organization to lean into, and that gives our staff a lot of autonomy because they're kind of doing a morality check, a value check with their decision making. And if it's rooted in that, they have freedom to do a lot of really cool and creative things without having to worry about the black and white protocols of how to do something. So,
oh, I love that. I'm curious, that creation. So you had just mentioned before we turned the cameras on, the name comes from a Grateful Dead song. And so I'm curious how the values and the creation of the company, and what was that like for you?
Yeah. So I'll say I've been the executive director of the Other Ones Foundation for about a year. Okay. Prior to that, my husband was actually the executive director and the founder. So we're kind of co-founders. He was definitely the lead back in 2017, and I served as a founding board member. Okay. So I've been involved all the way through and did a lot of work in the background while the organization was kind of budding. But yeah, in thinking about the name of the organization, my husband and I are Grateful Dead fans. Yeah. And it's kind of how we met, how we fell in love, and, how our relationship, the early part of our relationship evolved. Yeah. And so we landed on the name of the Other Ones Foundation. And it wasn't just a name to us. It was really about how we wanted to lead an organization. Mm-hmm. And the culture of the Grateful Dead is so interesting because it's so rooted in culture and shared values. Yeah. Yet it's so diverse. There's so many different people that engage in it. And so we really wanted to create that environment. There's actually a book that we both read really early on called Everything I Learned About Business, I Learned from the Grateful Dead. Oh,
and I have to look that up.
Yeah, it's a fun one.
Is it better than
Yeah. We'll add it to the pile. And it's really about a lot about branding and how people connect to a company, or in this case, a band. Yeah. And that really leans into people connecting to something deeper than a product or an outcome. Yeah. It's about how people carry themselves in the space and with the Grateful Dead, the values that we really adopted from that are being fiercely authentic, allowing people to really bring their true selves to the space, being completely accepting, just non-judgmental of others, and really valuing the human connection.
Nice.
And community. So everything we do at the Other Ones Foundation is rooted in community. It's how do we feel more connected to one another, staff to staff, executive team to direct service provider, client to staff member, and with our partners, we're always trying to strengthen those communal relationships.
Oh, I'm curious. Like, I love that because we have a marketing company as well. So the branding focus and the community focus is also a focus of ours too, with Atomic and Awkward. I'm curious, like, what are some of like those things that y'all do to like help foster community within the company and outside of it?
We try not to take ourselves too seriously. So often we do silly things. Like we take the time to do silly and fun things, right? We throw a fall festival so that everybody can put on costumes and throw candy around. We have parties all the time. And we really try to tap into joy. Joy connects people, you know? And so we do, there was a few weeks ago, I was driving out of Esperanza on a Friday night at 5 p.m. I'm pulling out, and there's like 5 of my staff and about 15 clients sitting in one of our outdoor communal spaces playing music. They had amped up, full drum kit, just jamming out, clients with microphones and harmonicas and kazoos. And it wasn't really like a structured, planned activity. It was like, we all feel like jamming. And so we're going to go around, let people know we're going to jam and we're going to play some music. And it's that sort of connection that I think really makes our organization unique too. I think there's like an over clinicalization of the work where it's like, maintain your personal boundaries and, you know, don't share anything private about yourself with clients. And I get it. Like I've been there. I've, you know, had to go and scrub the internet of my personal information and make sure that I stayed safe. But that doesn't mean that we can't connect as humans. I think it's important that clients know that we make mistakes and that we're willing to own them. And that's another thing that we really push at the Other Ones Foundation. It's like, it's not a bad thing to fail. Failing is but a learning opportunity, right? And so as long as we're willing to admit that we failed and learned from it, then it's actually a strength. It's a good thing because now moving forward, we can do things differently, better.
I love that. I was actually just coaching our therapist on building rapport and the importance of like self-disclosure and like how much and all of that and how that can build bonds within like the community and like them with all the clients. And it is a dance. It is like trying to, and also like what you said, like not getting too focused on the clinical work. It's been so funny this year. I've just been like, focus on the relationship. It's like, fuck the clinical work. Like just focus on the relationship. The clinical stuff will come, but that's like the number one skill to make progress.
Right. Because the client isn't going to authentically engage in that clinical work unless they trust you. And it's the same thing, especially in homeless services, right? Because people have been have been failed by so many systems for so long that you know, the homeless response system, we hear it all the time. I mean, now in the news, it's like you're always talking about the homeless response system. And folks feel like they're entering a system. They're tagged with a number. They're tagged with labels. They're told, this is your pathway through our system and out of homelessness. And I don't buy it. I'm like, this is not system. This is not a conveyor belt of housing. It doesn't work that efficiently. Unfortunately, it would be great if it did, if we could just put people on the conveyor belt and off to housing they went. But that's not how this works. And And our clients know that, and they know that systems fail them because they treat them in that conveyor belt kind of way. And so we really try to do it differently at TOOF. It's like the first and most important thing is that you trust us and you want to be here, you know, and that's something I've been saying a lot lately too, is like the emergency shelter system. And I've been asked, you know, what makes the Esperanza community different from other emergency shelters? And I'm like, people want to be here. Yeah. They have a safe and private place to be. They have fun things that are happening around them. They have a staff that's compassionate and builds meaningful relationships. They want to stay. And if you think about the traditional shelter setting where it's like, all right, you're in cot number 30 in this giant warehouse of 300 beds, it's like, I'm here because I have to be here.
I have nowhere else to go.
Right. And and so like, well, there's also nothing holding me back from leaving. So never mind, I'm not going to stay here tonight or for this week. And that's why shelters aren't effective. That's why like the success rates of emergency shelter getting people to housing are so low. Because people don't stay. Like that's the big factor. Can you get somebody to stay in shelter long enough for you to be able to problem solve with them a solution to homelessness? And we're able to do that at Esperanza.
I love that. I've admired that over the years that y'all are growing. It's like, that was like one of the hardest populations to build trust with. And so the fact that y'all are doing it and keep growing, I'm like, what are they doing out there? Like, that's amazing. And it sounds like it's focused on like the community and like treating them like a human, not like a cow going through like a processing facility. Like
Right. Well, and also building that trust and breaking, like, it's not so much that there is a part of us bringing them into our community, but it's just as much about them welcoming us into their community. And I started doing I started doing homeless services in Austin back in 2009. I worked at the Austin Resource Center for the Homeless for the local mental health authority, integral care. And it was really my first gig outside of college. I had like a couple other little side gigs for a few months, but that was like my first job. And well, let me take a step back first, because when I got a job at Integral Care, the local mental health authority, and I was doing social work, mental health counseling out in the community. And one day I was in a team meeting with my fellow case managers and our supervisor. There were maybe 15 or 20 of us in the room. And my manager said, all right, guys, so we have an opportunity. The Arch downtown is asking that we put a case manager down at the shelter to help out there.
Just one.
Just one. And who wants to do it? And my hand, well, my hand flew up so fast. It was like there were magnets in my fingertips and the ceiling was made of metal. And I looked around in the room and no one else had raised their hand. And I was like, well, shit. Like, what did I just get myself into? I had only been living in Austin for like 6 months. Like I didn't really understand the complexity of homelessness. I didn't know what I was getting myself into.
Of that facility.
But I went and I went down there and I did the work. And within the first like 3 to 4 weeks, I was like, oh my gosh, this population of people is incredible. The compassion that they have for one another, like the way they band together. And and I mean, it's unfortunate circumstances, right? I mean, they're all in survival mode, but some of the most beautiful characteristics of humanity come out in adversity, right? And so just seeing that on full display in emergency shelter was it drew me to that population. And I was like, these are my people. Like they're weird. They're, unpredictable. It keeps things interesting, but also like at heart, these are just incredible human beings with great potential.
Yeah.
And I loved it, and I still do.
Yeah.
Just love working with those folks. And so I feel honored that they let me in.
Yeah, you're in the community.
Yeah. And so it's nice to have that two-way connection.
I feel that because when I first got out of grad school myself, I did not want to do addiction work. I was like, nope, don't, it's too chaotic. I don't want to touch that. But I have a heart for like human trafficking victims. And I was just naive and didn't understand that addiction is a big part of that.
Right.
I just focused on like trauma and like worked in a DV shelter. And so I got my first like full-time job was on a detox unit at Rock Springs. And I was like, I love these people. Like I vibed with it as well. I was like, oh, I feel like welcomed into the community. I was like kind of like they tend to be black sheep of the family. And I was like, I vibe with that. And so then I realized quickly that like addiction is a big part of trafficking.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, like I get it now. And so it's wild what like the universe will just like set in your path.
Right.
Just say yes. And it like, you know, it'll work out.
Yeah. No, and it's I think there's like a forced authenticity that happens too with people in recovery too.
Yeah, they can call bullshit, just like the homeless population.
Yeah, and they're not going to open up. So you're going to be, you know, if you don't allow your true self to shine in those environments, like you're not going to have good outcomes, and it'll catch up pretty quick.
Yes, that's what I was coaching our therapist in recently, because one girl has such good client retention. I was like. And she's kind of like the black sheep of the group. Like she's not the strongest clinician, which we love her, but she's the personality, right? And so she has the strongest retention rate, which is huge. And her clients are making big moves and like growing and doing the skills and want to do like EMDR and trauma work. And so Monday I was like, what's your secret? Like, tell us, like, let's dive into it. Let's break it down. And so we did. And she was like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. Like, no, this is amazing.
Right.
But it is that relationship, and she's authentically her. And like, she'll go smoke a cigarette 15 feet away from the door.
Right.
With the people. And so it's like, she's building relationships, and she's like, you know, pretty genuine and like loves to laugh or like encourage like playing music and stuff like that. And so it's hard to like, you have to like realize that early on. And, like, let that guard down and like
that kind of goes in
a
question that I had for you, coming back to where you're talking about values. I think a lot of times as organizations we get pulled away from our values because we systematize everything with, you know, policies and procedures. And I think something that you've said repeatedly here, and then, you know, we're trying to figure out, you are able to maintain those values really well, and yet still maintain a level of quality and professionalism. I know when we went and toured, that was the biggest thing that stood out to me. I was like, no, this is like legit. Because I've been to a lot of other nonprofits and organizations that were doing stuff, even with other communities, and it was just everything was half-assed because they were just rushing constantly, and everything was about a procedure, and it was really hard to see the value there. But with y'all, you instantly see like, no, they truly care about this. So I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on how you are able to balance that, because I know for the level of quality and performance that y'all do, you have to have procedures and policies, and yet y'all still operate within a very strong value system.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I was a little surprised. I didn't realize you had a microphone in front of your face and that you were allowed to participate in this podcast. So I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here, bud.
I'm always a surprise.
He's like Jamie on Joe Rogan.
So yeah, it's a delicate balance of policy and procedure. Of course we have policy and procedure, and we have tons of it. And it is meticulously written in such a way that we're not creating rules that aren't necessary. So I remember early on at Espiranza, we had to write basically the handbook for clients, right? Like what's expected of you here at the Espiranza community. What are the policies, what's accepted, what's not accepted. And I had someone draft up a packet that was like 30 pages long for clients. And I was like,
They're not going to read that.
they're not going to read it, but also what bullshit do you have in here that actually like is something that we need? And we broke it down to like, here are 10 points. Here are 10 rules that guide how you move through this community, right? Don't hurt people.
Right.
Don't take their things.
Yeah.
Like be kind and respectful to your neighbors and to staff.
Yeah.
And it's like it was basically the value system for that community, right?
Yeah.
Guides the work. And you can only live in that sort of gray if there's that trust and communication and that connection, you know?
Yeah.
It didn't always work. Like eventually we had to add some like more like concrete rules, like how often we do inspections and stuff. But it's a mutual agreement.
Yeah.
And we try to move through all of our policies and procedures in that way of like how can we structure this in a way where we don't have to answer a bazillion questions a week of how do I do it and why do I do it?
Yeah.
But how do we give just enough guidance so that people can trust that they know how to carry it the rest of the way, you know?
Yeah.
So it is a very delicate balance. And I think the other thing that's really helpful is even if we do have to do black and white and really like talk through a process and write it all out in an operating procedure, like, are we doing a values check on it?
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden policies and procedures start to feel really intuitive, user-friendly, easy to figure out if it's all value aligned. But if you start to have these policies and procedures that seem to conflict with your values, then it starts to break down and get a lot harder.
We had a conversation, an argument this week with our other partner, because I'm more harm reduction focused, and he's kind of more black and white with relapses and stuff like that. And so I made a policy and broke down how much alcohol can you have and how much THC and like what levels we would like, you know, hold the boundary. Like when do we implement a behavior contract and then, you know, step you up to a higher level of care.
It's a difficult balance for
very
sure
nuanced.
Because like on one end you have absolute freedom and there's no structure, and then on the other end you have like loss of liberty because you've structured everything.
Yeah.
And we're constantly trying to find that harmony somewhere in the middle of that spectrum.
Yeah.
Because you also, like, we were in a position where we don't want to show favoritism, so it's like, okay, well, if it's bad for one, it has to be bad for all. Like maybe that's not the case across the board, but as a organization, we have to operate that way.
Right.
What is our line in the sand?
Right.
Right. Well, and I think one of the other things that's been really helpful for us on the program level is including our clients in those decisions. You know, how would you want to be treated in this situation? What makes you feel safe, or what makes you feel like you've been betrayed?
Yeah.
And how can we portray that in a policy or a practice? And in order to do that, we have to be able to have like difficult conversations. And this is something that every year or two, I have to go back to my teams and be like, all right, guys, we have to talk about the difference between being kind and being nice.
Yeah.
And, you know, there was a period of time where we were doing that collaborative program design and policy design with clients. And we didn't want to say that was a bad idea.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we didn't want to tell clients like, oh,
Yeah.
no, that's a bad idea, bro. We're not doing that. Like that's, you know, that doesn't make any sense because we were being nice. We weren't being kind, right? Because the outcome of that was that 6 months down the road or a year down the road, some other client had to deal with the consequences of that niceness, right?
We talk about that a lot. We say nice versus good. Like, are you being a good friend, or are you just being a nice friend? Like, if you're just affirming terrible behavior that's going to hurt them in the long run, that's not a good friend. You're just being nice in the moment.
Yeah, to avoid conflict. It's like that Brene Brown, like clear is kind.
Yes, absolutely. Love Brene Brown.
Clear?
Yeah.
Which is an instant classic.
Yeah.
Being clear with the team, it sounds like, and the clients and everyone. And like, having those hard conversations of like, yes, but like, why is that going to be a bad situation if we do include that policy.
Right. Yeah. It's difficult work, but it's worth the time. And then it's replicable, So with TOOF, we recently took on a new shelter. So I don't know if you knew this. So we applied to run a city shelter, the Southbridge shelter. That's actually right up the street here on
nice.
I-35 near Altworth.
Okay.
And we did that because Esperanza is working, and because we're like, I think that this can translate. Like, I don't think it has to be in tiny cottages on this 7-acre lot of land. Like, I think this model can translate and become something that's really replicable. Cool. And so this project gives us a chance to prove that. Yeah. And it's so much, well, I should knock on wood. We just started at the beginning of this month. I'm like, it's so much easier than Esperanza was. But I mean, we have a template to use, right? Of like how we move through this work. And I think it's going to be, I'm interested to see how my team handles it and how clients engage with it, because we do have all these lessons learned to bring. Yeah. But we don't want to get ahead of ourselves and say, we're just going to plop this here because we know best, right? That's how how systems have evolved to this place of like, we know best and this is how we're going to do it for you. Yeah. And so we're still like going through all of the steps of like having these big community meetings and saying like, what do you guys think about this policy and that policy? And it looks like there's a lot of dog shit around the property. Like, what do you guys think we should do about that? Like, what kind of boundaries should we put in place about that? And we're going to have these conversations partially because we need to check ourselves, which I hope that the Other Ones Foundation does forever, that we're always checking ourselves and leaning on the people that we're serving for guidance. But also to bring the clients along, you deserve to understand like why these rules are in place. What is it set to mitigate? And for them to develop a deep understanding and buy into it. Like, I know if I follow this rule, there's going to be this reward, right? That I don't have shit on my shoe after walking through the parking lot. So, so it's fun. It's fun work. And I think our staff really enjoy doing that too and engaging with clients in that collaborative way. It's not a maternal, like, all right, here's your service plan and we're going to go through A, B, and C today. It's like, no, we're like we're problem solving together, right? Which is relationship building.
Yeah. I love that. It's kind of coming to mind, like we're trying to build out our alumni program. And so we've had them like, what do y'all want to do for the alumni events? And like, they come in and like, do events with the current clients. And so it's like, what do you think they would like? Like, what did you want when you were here? But I think we could take that deeper and like go into like the systems of the program. And I was
thinking the same thing.
I need to take a survey of our alumni and ask them like, some like strategic questions about the program and how we could improve it. Because we send out like an exit survey, but it's always just like, I loved it or I hated it. Right. But I think if we're more strategic with those people that are part of that extended community and like, they're sing our praises. We've had like 2 referrals from alumni this month. Like, it's just,
that's great.
It's cool. And so like people that like believe in it and see it worked for them. Yeah. Like, hey, like what worked for you? What didn't work for you?
It's definitely a goal of ours that alumni kind of take ownership of it as a community of like, this is my community. And it's really hard to figure out that sweet spot of how you encourage that. I think we do decent at it. But we're always trying to figure out how we can get people more engaged, because that's the biggest key to success, right? Is that you have a community that feels like it's yours.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's great. Alumni are such a great group to kind of bring into those discussions and reflect. And it's been great to see how that evolves too. So, for us, what we wind up with is after folks like kind of graduate and reinvest in the program in that sort of way, we go through these conversations, which I'm sure you guys will find too, where it's like, well, let me educate you a little bit on like best practices in recovery care. And, this is a component that the research says we should be cautious of that might conflict with your suggestion, right? So there's this whole educational process. And then we see people coming out of the other end saying, wow, I want to do this work.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I want to go and get training as a peer recovery specialist, or I want to go to, a social work program at UT and come back around to get employed. So I think, I don't know the numbers right now, but we have a fairly high, I think we probably have no, it's higher. It has recently gotten higher. We have like 15 to 20% of people that work at the Other Ones Foundation were prior clients.
That's awesome.
And that it becomes this cyclical thing, right? Because then you have people who have been through it, actually implementing these policies and procedures and knowing what that feels like to have those sorts of rules or interventions or whatever.
And they believe,
applied.
to their core, they believe in the program.
Yeah, it works.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I love that. We've seen, because we're not there yet, we're even smaller, younger than y'all. But we have seen like alumni or clients that are like, I'm going to go get my LCDC, or I'm going to go work with like underprivileged children in this like city. And so it's cool to see them like, trying that out and like giving back and healing themselves, and then going to like see like, hey, like this worked for me. Like I'm gonna go like show you like you can do it. Like,
Right.
It's been really cool to see them like in the communities, and then one's like going to another state to do the inner city work. It's cool to see like the passion coming alive to like help others, because we'll get a lot of people, y'all probably see this too, like that are kind of like, you go back to like the joy. I heard something recently that was like joy kind of inspires hope. And so it's cool to see people finding hope and like a path for their future, where they kind of come in like purposeless and like hopeless and like futureless. And so it's cool to see people like figuring out and like replacing the like chaotic cycles with like positive cycles for like their future.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's wonderful too with the alumni, all that work with the alumni and people moving on. Like that feedback loop is hard for us sometimes. Like we lose that feedback loop.
Yeah.
And when, it's just wonderful to have somebody reach back out a year or 2 years later and be like, hey, you made a difference in my life. Right. And thank you for that, and here's where I'm at now. So I hope you guys get that too. I imagine people like getting into the field, they'll reach back out and be like, yo, I'm rocking it.
We do
I'm
get
doing
that.
it.
And it's amazing.
Yeah.
And because we have Atomic, they get to stay with their therapists, some of them. And so we get to hear it like as they're like getting into the field, and it's really fun.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see where they go.
It is wonderful. Yeah. Doing this work for as long as I have, it's amazing how many people you can touch, And there's still like times where I've bumped into somebody that I worked with 15 years ago at the Arch. That's like, hey, Miss, my name at that time was Westfall. Miss Westfall, you made a difference. Like, look at me now. And that's like, it doesn't happen often, especially in homeless services, right? Yeah. Like we have, there's a number of reasons that it's really hard to reconnect with people. But I tell folks when I do have those situations, I have like a little bottle I keep in my pocket, and I'm like, put it in there. I'm gonna stick it in my pocket, and this is gonna be like my like motivation for the next year. It doesn't take it happening often for it to continue to drive me every day, because this work is hard, and and especially what I've found is like as I've evolved in my career, going from being like a case manager to, a program manager, like you get further and further away from the work that is like the evidence of your impact. It's harder to get that affirmation that you're making a difference, because you're working on these giant systems,
We talk about that a lot. That you get disconnected and you're so focused on systematic problems, you don't really get to pick your head up and look at the impact.
How much has been, how you're impacting through your staff. And I subbed in for a group. Someone was out sick or took vacation last week, and I had a couple clients that were like, this place changed my life. I was just like, oh my God, I needed to hear this. Because I'm stressing about like state things or like licensure, like the like procedures things, and it's so like disconnected from like what we're doing. And so it was really cool to like hear that, like, and like the shift that she had from previous, like, because we'll get kind of similar to what you're talking about, like treatment centers that just cycle people in and like, you know, that whole cycle. And so she had experienced that and then came here and was like, oh my God, she was like, did not want to come, like was like so against, like she's like, my therapist is too young, she what does she know? And and then like it's like amazing, and like wants to come back to do the mental health program after taking care of some stuff. And so it's cool to see that progress and like put myself back in it, and like hear it from the people that are in the program. It's like, oh, okay, it actually is working. Like, 'cause I just get so beat down with the higher level things.
It makes me think that should be like prescripted. Like if you are an executive, the expectation is that you're going and interacting with clients on this frequency. Like write the prescription out, like post it on your bulletin board. And it, you know, I'm very fortunate in that, you know, being at Espiranza, like I'm on site. I can do that. And it's difficult because sometimes I find myself putting my nose in places that it shouldn't be. And
hard to stay in your lane.
They got a lot of feedback this week. It's good feedback, but
So it's but it's so important. It's so important to keep motivated and to keep grounded in what the work actually means. You know, I find myself often being asked questions about like how operationally the program works, or, you know, clients' responses to certain types of interventions. And I'm like, I don't know, let me go and ask my team, right? Because it's different. These things change and evolve over time. And so again, it's that like as executives, as organizations, we need to carry ourselves with confidence. We need to carry ourselves leaning on our strengths and our expertise, but we always need to be checking, you know, checking ourselves, checking our ego, like keeping grounded. And that's something, you know, that's been really important for me and something I keep top of mind.
How do you do that? Like, do you have strategies other than like going into the community?
So partnerships has been a big thing for me, is, you know, leaning into partners to educate me, you know, help me understand what you do. Let me help you understand what we do. And acknowledging like we don't do everything well. So I can't tell you how many partners I've reached out to where I'm like, you know, I don't think that we do this really good. Do you want to do it for us? Nice. You know, and like owning that, like we don't need to do it all.
Right. That's huge.
And that I think strengthens our services. I think that it strengthens my relationship with those partner organizations, because they're like, all right, cool. They're willing to admit like they do a shitty job at this particular thing. Like, cool. Like we can trust that they're going to own when they need help. And I think that's a challenge for some folks. So that's one thing that I try to just keep very humble, and it's all about creating the best possible outcome for our clients. And so there's no room for egos in that space. Yeah,
that's huge to like own, like, hey, we don't do this. Like, we keep running into like struggling to find good psychiatry facilities to like partner with, and so I'm like, we'll just do it ourselves. Like, maybe we'll hire one. Like, it's probably not the best route to go.
Right.
We just need to find one that is a good fit.
Yeah. It's and there's, you know, particularly now with in the nonprofit space, like the funding shifts and just how drastically the landscape is about to change. And I don't think I think it's happening in some ways very slowly, but I think that in a year or so, we're going to look back to 2025 nonprofit landscape, and it's going to be unrecognizable.
Wow. You say it's a good thing or a bad thing?
I'm going to say pretty confident it's going to be a bad thing. But, you know, there's some things that I think will be good about it. So
Yeah, can you go in depth a little bit about it? Because we're just kind of out of the loop because we don't operate in that space.
Yeah.
But
We've been adjacent to it a couple times.
right,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I know there's like a ton of political impact that happens in that area.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what's happened is in like 2019, 2020, COVID and the American Rescue Plan Act happened, right? And so there was this huge spike in resources for all sorts of nonprofits, healthcare nonprofits, homeless service nonprofits. The money was just like, it appeared as if it was just raining from the skies. And I remember saying, there were more opportunities than we could apply for. I was like, we can't grow that fast. At that point, the Other Ones Foundation grew 4 times in our staffing and funding between 2020 and 2023. And I was like, we can't do any more like that. It's irresponsible to take on any more than that. And I know other organizations, even well-established organizations, were feeling the same way. So the only solution was, well, we need new nonprofits then to open up and take on some of these resources so that we can create this influx in services in the community. It was great. I mean, organizations boomed. The services were getting to clients. But nobody really acknowledged at the time, like, hey, these funds are temporary, y'all. Like, they're not going to last forever. We knew that from the beginning, but nobody was having those conversations about what does it look like to wind this all down. So, I think there was some awareness of like, okay, we got to be careful to make sure that we allocate this money to things that can be like one-time funding opportunities. Like at the government level, I think that the state and federal level, those were the conversations. But locally, like from the provider perspective, people were like, just expanding programs like crazy and not thinking through the fact that like, I'm going to have to close this down in 3 years.
Right.
So now we're at close down time, right? Like
it's been a lot of
you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Like, and so there was already a big influx in nonprofit, in the number of nonprofits since 2000. I actually looked up these numbers yesterday. Since 2000 compared to 2026, there's like 4 times as many nonprofits nationally.
Really?
Then, it's grown. I think it was like 60% growth. And what that means is, one, systems are harder to navigate. It becomes more coincidental that you find the right provider, right? Because the networks are so huge and so complicated, and they grew so fast that there's not coordinated systems to help customers figure out where to go. And the funds are really kind of dispersed in a way that is maybe not the smartest or most effective or use of public dollars.
Yeah.
So all of that is kind of consequences of that big ARPA influx. But now that those funds are going away, there's a lot of smaller organizations, grassroots organizations that had been, that had been funded through that, that are trying to figure out, well, what is their place now? It's hard. It's hard because I know some of these people and I really appreciate the work that they do. And I know it's important, but I'm also like, how many people do we need like delivering groceries?
Right.
Yeah.
Is there, and it's about creating an efficient system. And that's why TOOF really has leaned into like partnerships. I'm not going to start a whole new line of service. Like that costs a lot of money to like figure out how to do something and train and create all these new procedures. So we're going to bring in a partner to do that. Yeah. And I think that's a mindset in the nonprofit world that folks have to get back into. If you are a jack of all trades, you're doing it wrong. It means you're doing everything mediocre, and we're not in a resource abundant situation anymore.
That's also the way majority of for-profit companies will operate too. Like if you look at any big company, in general, they're going to operate around 70 to 80% in-house, and then 20 to 30% is going to be contracted out. Because when time gets tough, I want to be able to have some buffer there before I have to lay off my people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, if you look at it from a long-term systematic approach, that's what works, is to partner with other people, because exactly what you said, when the funding stops, I need to be able to cut off somewhere and it not be an internal aspect.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And also we're stronger. We do better services that way. Right. I, recently, I've had some conversations. We've been having a lot of conversations around our workforce development continuum. And we had, this is probably within the last couple of years that we've been like, okay, we really need to expand out how we support people getting back into the workforce. Like we did transitional jobs and really early job readiness training for a long time, and it wasn't translating into permanent employment. So, okay, we need to stretch out this continuum. We need to bring in more services. And in our minds, I think we had this idea that we were going to like just be able to build out this continuum and the money would flow. And I'm like, we got a big slap in the face, essentially, of like, you don't know what you're talking about. This is a completely different system of care. It's a completely different funding infrastructure. Everything. It's its own ball of wax. And recently, kind of came to the conclusion of like, yeah, we don't need to be doing all of that. We have willing partners and Central Texas, Goodwill Central Texas, and Workforce Solutions, and the Literacy Coalition. Like all these folks have already cracked the code on how to access the funding, who are the supports, who are the right people that need to be at the table, and what are the best practices to make it work. And so I do wonder, I would love one day to find out, like, what does it actually cost these systems of care for people just recreating wheels?
Yeah.
And nobody telling them, hey, you're recreating the wheel.
Been done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we caught it. We definitely put some resources into it. But I'm glad we caught ourselves and kind of set ourselves straight there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great question. It seems like that's maybe what people are or the government's starting to ask. And say, like, well, like, because all these places are like there's places that have been investigated, and it's like, hey, like, this is not effective as much as this place is being more effective. And so I imagine like the data and all of that, the numbers and statistics are important to present. Just say like, hey, we're not reinventing the wheel. It is actually something new, and we're like actually helping people. And so I think that's important. I'm glad y'all found people that do that, and so you didn't have to do that yourself.
And usually it's the difference of like building an entire program and system of care for clients, and going to Goodwill in Central Texas and saying, hey, if you just kind of tweak a few of the ways that you do things, you can effectively serve this population. And that's our niche. That's our unique perspective on it, is like the way that workforce development programs just generally operate in the community for like a kid graduating community college or, someone graduating high school is not going to work for people experiencing homelessness. But I can tell you the modifications you need to make to those programs for them to be accessible for this population. And that's where we are the advocate. We are the spokesperson. We are, pushing for the folks that we serve to get access to services in a more effective way.
That's awesome, because a lot of places are like, oh, well, they don't serve your population, or they don't do it well. Like, and so y'all are investigating, like, who's the decision maker? Who do I talk to advocate for our people to like modify this so it fits for our people, so we don't have to reinvent it.
Right. And that's the system level work that I really enjoy. We've talked a lot about like the connection with clients, but the system level work is its own like playground of fun work to be done. And that's really like, I get excited. I talk about my work being like a like a playground or an amusement park, because I freaking love it. Like I could not imagine like retirement. I'm going to go absolutely bonkers. I've thought about it. I'm like, okay, if I retire, it's going to have to be something that keeps me like super busy. Like I need farm animals. I need a big garden. Like don't let me sit still for too long. But the system level work is just so fascinating, and it's a way of making an impact that can last forever.
Right.
Like if you're able to tweak even just a little piece of that system, it can really have impacts that will last past your lifetime. And so
I love that you say that, because I've noticed people like creating our own systems here and like doing business. Even when I first started, I was like, oh, business is this big, like behind the curtain thing. Like it has these, like, I don't know, people running it. And it's like we are the people running it. Like,
right.
And other people are people running it. And so like having like figured that out and having that aha moment, did you have one of those where like going up from being case manager and like kind of working boots on the ground, like did you have a moment where you're like, oh, I do have a voice in the system? Like, do you have a moment like that?
Yes. So I had, let's see, this was 2022, 2023. I had applied to be on Leadership Council. So Leadership Council is the governing board that oversees all HUD homeless service funding, right?
Yeah.
So it's like $15 million that comes into the Austin area every year. And then plus ESG, it's probably closer to 20 million total. And basically that governing board writes the best practices for homeless interventions that all providers locally have to use, right? Like the city adopts them. And so it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
And I had interacted with that council as a case manager, like sat on work groups or did committees over the years, but I applied to be on the council itself. And I was shocked. I was like, okay, wait, I've been doing this work for 15 years.
Yeah.
I came into this meeting and I'm lost. And not just like the first couple of meetings, like the first 9 months, I'm like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. This is crazy. So it was a big learning curve. And then one day I was explaining to someone like, I have a hard time like speaking up in the space. Like I just don't feel confident in like my opinion really mattering, that I'm really understanding all of the issues. And the person's jaw dropped and they looked at me and they're like, you're the most veteran person at the table. Like you've been doing the work the longest.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh shit, that's terrifying.
That I don't understand. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, so like this is what it feels like to be in a position of power and control over these sorts of things and have that sort of influence. It's been a really humbling and wonderful experience to like own my part in that space, own my authority, own my leadership in the community. And my seat is actually, I'm rolling off the council in the next couple of months. So I'm a little like nervous and it sucks because I really feel like I've grown into an understanding of what it means to take risks, to learn from your experience, to lead others and facilitate these big decisions being made at a really difficult time. I mean, if you've been watching the federal kind of policies roll out and there's a lot changing right now and the landscape is shifting rapidly. And so it's been really an honor to be able to sit in that seat and grow in that way through that council.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. It's, people just think it's like a curtain and it's like, what's behind that? It's like people. So it sounds like you're like connecting with people, realizing your impact as well. I think, I don't know if this was your experience, but in my experience working in the field, a lot of my like supervisors would try to like keep me down or just be like, just do your work. Like, you can't change the system is what I was told. And so it's like actually like finding a way to change it. And so that was like building my own thing. It sounds like that council was how you're like, hey, I can change this. I can do something different.
Yeah. I mean, that was definitely a space that allowed me to like embrace the authority that I really had in the community from having that experience, from, holding the positions that I did. But other like the advocacy efforts, I'm still learning quite a bit around like state legislative advocacy and what that looks like and the, the bill kind of development and how you influence that and how you use your expertise. How do you become one of those experts that legislative folks want to reach out to and say, hey, what do you think about this bill before it gets circulated around? And so it's very interesting, and I'm excited to see what other sorts of, like, how I can continue to grow that impact. And I saw your guys' sign. You had a sign in your lobby that was something along the lines. You can probably do the correct language for me, but it was something like, as long as one life is impacted, my life has not been in vain, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's been the challenge that I've put upon myself through my entire professional career is like, okay, ever since that first person, right, who was like, wow, you changed my life. I'm like, okay, how many times over can I do that?
Yeah.
You know, and the higher I get in that system work, the more of those impacts I can be making. And so
a broader impact.
Yeah,
that my friend in college made that for me. She
Really?
knew what I wanted to do with my mission. And so she had like that quote. It's like, it's a famous author. I forget the name of it. But yeah, it's, if I can impact one person, like my life is not lived in vain. Yeah.
Right.
And so it's cool to see you're so passionate about like helping people, but when we can branch out into like creating the systems that are changing the other systems and branch into, I think it's cool that you're going from the council into like, how do I change the like laws now? And that's the next step. And I think that's huge because it has such a broad impact, and it can feel, when like we were talking about earlier, it can feel so disconnected from the work, but it really does, like, you know, actually change people's lives in a huge way. And so it's just a slower, it's not as like immediate gratification. It's a much slower gratification. But that's awesome that like you're able to like use that and keep growing and going on to it's important to know when to go to the next level as well. It sounds like your time at the council's done, and now it's like time to move into something more intense.
Right. Always trying to challenge ourselves in new ways. And it's something I've had to really, I feel like we get to a point, like if anytime you have gotten a promotion, right? It's like you get to this crescendo in your position and then you just plateau, and it's like, okay, I got this, right? Like I could do this in my sleep. And for some folks it's like, okay, well I've made it. Now I can just kind of coast, right? And that's never been me. I'm like, okay, well I need that high. Like where's the next crescendo, right? And be pushing for that. So
I laugh because that is us.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a blessing or a curse, but it's definitely a trait.
Right.
But you need the people who we call it like entrepreneur mind and the employee mindset. You need those people that are like want that position and like stay in that position and like, you know, like have the system down. Like we need those people to grow companies.
Right.
But yeah, we are not those people.
I think I saw somebody talks about this on a podcast. It might have been Alex Hermosi, and he said a friend of his from high school was asking him, you know, how he was so successful and what they were doing wrong. He's like, dude, you're not the one that's broke. I am. He's like, you're able to have this perfect work-life balance and everything's in harmony. He's like, I always have to find that next thing because I'm broken. And I was like, I think that's us 100%. Like, it's really hard for us to connect with a lot of people that don't operate like this, that aren't entrepreneurs. Because there's something in our brain that's just different than the typical person. We can never find that satisfaction, that we always have to chase something. That's why I said I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse. It looks very successful to the outside, but to us it's like, I got to find the next thing.
It's so stressful. Like the stress never ends, right? And it's like self-fulfilling prophecy. Like I think you're doing this to yourself.
What you ask for. Well, that's like, I had always said I wanted to do a human trafficking recovery center. And just like putting that out in the world again. I kind of took time off because I was like, you know what? I gotta like figure out life first. And now that it's like back in the view and in my language, stuff is starting to fall into place. I'm like, oh my God, wait, do I want to do this? Wait.
Right.
But I've had that like, I feel like it's like a God calling or like universe calling, like to do that. And when you have that kind of like mission and like vision in your head, like it feels crazy to stop that. It feels like you're like going against like what you're made for. But at the same time, like the next level feels really scary.
Yeah.
I don't know if I get into like a lot, because I've known people to do recovery centers, human trafficking recovery centers, and now they do work in law enforcement and like collaborate. I'm like, that sounds scary. So I'm like, what is happening?
It is
careful what you ask for.
it is scary. And I think, but I think maybe one of those traits that we all share too is like not being that lack of fear of failure, right? Like I don't fear failure.
Yeah.
I don't take myself too seriously. It's okay if I look like an idiot.
Yeah.
There was my husband for a while was putting on Facebook like go out and look stupid or something like that. Like try something, essentially like try something new, right? And so he was like 40 years old and picking up skateboarding again that he hadn't done since he was a kid, and like just kind of like embracing the challenge for ourselves to keep life exciting, keep pushing ourselves, keep challenging ourselves, and not be afraid of the consequences. Like your heart's in the right place. So I don't think we're going to do much harm. But putting yourself out there in that way to just look like an idiot is
the price of success is being awkward.
Yes. I love that. The price of success is being awkward. I a few years ago, my kids were getting older, right? I have a 10 and a 13-year-old now. So when they were like 7 and 10, I was like, man, you guys, like, you still want to be around me, which is great, but like, you don't need me. Like, you can make your own peanut butter and jelly. Like, you can get your own water. You like go out to the park by yourself down the street. What am I going to do with myself? Like having to like redefine myself outside of motherhood.
Yeah.
And outside of my professional career, like, what do I do with my time other than work too much? And I decided to pick up ice hockey.
Oh,
and so I played roller hockey as a kid, and I brought my kid to a birthday party at the ice rink, and I was like, I'm gonna throw on some skates. I wonder if I can still skate. And man, I was going backwards, like backwards crossovers. Like I was like, holy crap! Like I just remember all of this. And
in
so,
Austin?
Where do you ice skate?
Chaparral Ice. So up on Anderson Lane. There's a few hockey rinks. So there's also the pond and then the crossover up north.
Really?
But I play at Chaparral, and I play in like they call it the beer league. It's like the low, like if like you got AAA, right? Like almost going pro. Like C2, like I'm like full like down below, like negative C.